Hello everyone, Rituro here with another special report for Toronto Thumbs. Our special report today is an interview with krangGAMES' Nick Yonge. Nick is the developer of I Saw Her Standing There, a delightful series of Flash-based platformers. He's also the developer of an upcoming game that he successfully funded through Kickstarter called Emerald. Now, we did this interview with Nick a while ago. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a technical snafu, so you're going to see a lot of Nick, and you're not going to hear a lot of me. So, already, this interview is better than most. Anyway, enjoy. This is Nick Yonge from krangGAMES.
It's a Flash game that I made in, I think, 2011 was the year. The 2011 and 2012 was the year that I made the first iteration of it in a week. Honestly, the first game was just cobbled together very quickly. And yeah, it did surprisingly well, and ended up getting a finalist actually in the Canadian Video Game Awards, which was pretty rad. It was nice to see it getting played by so many people and that sort of thing. I initially made the game straight up as a little tech demo thing. I was messing around in Flash, and I wanted to come up with a way to make a simple way of controlling AI. So I wrote this little character controller and combat controller that let characters move around, and they could tell who was their friend, who was their enemy. And I had a bunch of characters on screen at once one day when my roommate walked by, and Kelly Wright, and he walked by and said they kind of look like zombies. So I was like, oh, I guess they kind of do look like zombies. And then I made a cutesy little zombie game based around that. I had no idea how popular the game would be, so it went for very, very little money. But it was ultimately a big hit, and kind of it was a fun game to make. The first time you do a Kickstarter, it's always terrifying. I've talked to a lot of people, other game devs and other people besides who've done Kickstarters. And yeah, you're going on the internet and asking people to give you money. That's always a little nerve-wracking. But it went over quite well. The ask was, I think, $5,800. So getting a little over $10,000 was kind of a lovely surprise. I'm still working on it. The initial launch date was, I think, February 13th or January or something. But that ship is clearly set sail. It's still in development. I post updates roughly once a month or so, and it's just it's taking a lot longer than I anticipated to make, which is an unpleasantly common problem with Kickstarters. But it is absolutely still in development. You can see changes and stuff that get made to the game as it goes along. What it looks like now, in the Kickstarter video, that was an old prototype that was built in Flash, which, aesthetically it's similar to what it looks like now, but it's obviously changed quite a bit in the last, not doing nothing during this year while the game gets horrifically delayed. That's sort of like a little playground room that I set up just in the cryogenic chamber. I just filled it with a bunch of interactive things, little enemies and lasers and that sort of thing. Where I first came up with the story was at a global game jam in 2013, and I wasn't actually planning on making anything at global game jam, but then halfway through the jam, as I was sleeping, the story of Emerald kind of popped into my head all at once, because at the time I was dealing with a lot of personal crud, and ended up envisioning Emerald and funneling a lot of that emotion into the game. So the story of Emerald is sort of tied to that time where I was in my life, where it was kind of a stressful personal period. As far as the story that you actually experience in the game is concerned, though, it's more a bit more straightforward. I mean, you play as a character on a ship. The ship has obviously undergone some kind of calamity. You wake up and it's drifting in space. You as the protagonist float throughout the ship in a zero gravity, and first of all, figure out what happens, because I won't go into spoiler territory, but your role on the ship, like your job as a crew member, was like super insignificant. So you weren't actually like involved with any of the heavy duty stuff going on in the ship. So, you know, all of a sudden all this crazy stuff starts going down, and, you know, you're left like trying to figure out what the heck just happened, and you know, what you can do going forward, and, you know, how you can not die on this ship, basically. I mean, it's definitely stressful. There's no formal structure or anything because I am the only employee. Like, we're in my bedroom right now, and this is my workspace and office. And, you know, I have a mirror on my closet, and you can kind of see some of my laundry hanging out on the other side of the room there. So it's definitely not formal, but it's very I guess relaxed. Well, no, relaxed isn't quite the term. It's difficult to maintain focus, but, you know, it's nice being able to, you know, work and sort of call the shots and work in a method that best suits you, or, you know, myself in this case. So it's I think, you know, I certainly wouldn't do it differently. It is enjoyable, but it is, you know, much more stressful than you might believe. I'm really reluctant to actually lay down a date. And I absolutely wish I could give a more concrete thing, but honestly, I don't even know when it comes out. Not to mention, you know, it's, you know, I'm launching the game it's the biggest game that I've launched to date, and even a Flash game, you know, after the game is done, you still have to work with sponsors and work with other people, and that adds a couple of weeks. And launching a game as a standalone title on PC, Mac, that sort of thing, that'll probably at least add another month of just, you know, business dealings, that sort of thing, to the launching of the game, and that's being rather conservative. So it's really difficult to say. Right now, I'm estimating. Honestly, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying anything more concrete than later 2014, like late 2014. Autumn, winter, thereabouts would be as granular as I'd like to get. But you know, I've said this in several of my updates. As soon as I like have a more concrete launch date, I'll, you know, post that right the hell away. Like, I really want to launch this game, and, you know, I'm working on it quite a bit, so I'm quite excited to see what people think of it.